Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new Ace in a Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. In today's episode we shall be reviewing the Morane-Saulnier M.S.410, a French fighter aircraft coming to tier of 2 and a battle rating of 2.0. To provide you with a brief historical overview as to this aircraft, we need to go back to its originator, the M.S.406, and start from there. Starting in 1934, the French Air Force issued the C-1 specification for a new, modern single-seat fighter. The aircraft was to be a monoplane with retractable undercarriage, aimed at replacing the in-service D-14, D-371 and D-500 aircraft. Morane-Saulnier responded with their M.S.405 design, a low-wing monoplane with an all-metal airframe, and an enclosed cockpit. The plane was to be powered by the Hispano-Suiza 12Y GRS 860 horsepower V12 engine and armed with a combination of two 7.5mm MAC 1934 machine guns in the wings, along with a 20mm Hispano-Suiza 404 cannon as firing through the propeller hub. The prototype MS-405-1 flew for the first time on the 8th of August 1935 with positive results. It was the first French fighter aircraft to break the speed barrier at sea level of 400 km an hour or 250 miles per hour and notched a top speed of 489 km an hour or 303 miles per hour at an altitude of 4,000 meters or 13,200 feet. The initial prototype was to be followed by the second prototype, MS-405-2, which made its maiden flight on the 20th of January 1937. This plane featured an uprated Hispano-Suiza 12Y CRS 900 horsepower engine, along with refinements to both the propeller and wings. After a number of trial flights, the French Air Force placed a pre-production order for 16 additional prototypes in March of 1937. These prototypes were designated MS-406 due to the improvements made to the design since the initial MS-405-1 prototype. The plane was now powered by the 860 horsepower Hispano-Suiza 12Y31 engine, the first of these aircraft being produced and flying for the first time as the 3rd of February 1938. The intent of these pre-production prototypes was to lay the blueprint for the mass production of the MS-406, and as of March 1938, the French Air Force placed an order for 1,000 of these aircraft. 572 of these had been produced by the outbreak of the Second World War in September of 1939. Being equipped to 12 squadrons in total. Unfortunately, the Battle for France revealed that the MS-406 was inferior to the Messerschmitt 109 ML, whereby it was only able to outperform its German counterpart in terms of turn circle. Nonetheless, for a total of 150 MS-406s shot down, a total of 269 confirmed victories on Luftwaffe aircraft were scored by MS-406 pilots. And by the end of the Battle for France, a staggering number of 1,037 MS-406s had been produced, despite the late entry into production. The MS-410 then, what you're seeing on screen today, was an attempt to improve the aircraft's design based on combat experience in autumn of 1939. This model saw the enhancement of the armament to 4 7.5mm machine guns mounted in the wings, which were heated to prevent freezing at high altitude. There was also the addition of a new reflector sight and the provision of a redesigned, stronger wing. In all, the plane was 16 km an hour or 10 miles an hour faster than its predecessor, and following the successful trialling of two prototypes, the French Air Force ordered that 500 MS-406s be upgraded to MS-410s as soon as possible. However, this order was stopped in May of 1940 so that all available aircraft could enter combat service, meaning that only 5 MS-410 upgrades had been completed by this point in time. A further 69 MS-410 upgrades were completed under German supervision following the Battle for France. But the history does not end there. For 11 of these MS-410s were sent to Finland by 1943, and despite being completely out of date by this time, the aircraft designer Arne Lakoma turned the plane into a modern fighter once again by fitting captured Soviet 1,100 horsepower Klimov M105P engines alongside some other modifications to the aircraft. These engines, as taken from LAG fighter aircraft designs, meant these aircraft were redesignated as LAG Morans, and a total of 3 of these conversions were produced. They were used by the Finnish Air Force in a limited factor, all the way up to the end of the Continuation War in September of 1934. And with our historical overview concluded, let us take a look at how the M.S.410 handles in the skies of War Thunder's arcade air battles. Today's gameplay is brought to you from the ground strike map Cliff to Coast. For this we'll be using the following setup. Stealth belts for all types of armament, reasoning being that in our experience we have found that the stealth belts are the most potent out of those available for both our machine guns and cannon. Our gun convergence is set to 400 meters, noting that the convergence will only affect our wing mounted machine guns and not our centerline mounted 20mm cannon. Therefore we want a convergence which will enable us to use our machine guns in a number of scenarios where it be longer distance intersection of enemy aircraft, particularly enemy bombers, alternatively closer range turn fighting against enemy fighters, and a 400 meter gun convergence enables this. As for our fuel load, we are taking the standard 30-minute fuel load to ensure we can make it to the end of the game unscathed on fuel capacity. From here we automatically talk about the MS-410's climb rate, and what you'll note straight away if you've been flying the Tier 1 French fighters up to this point is that the MS-410's climb rate is a considerable improvement, whereby we are now able to get to a significant amount of altitude rather rapidly from spawn, say increase our altitude by 1000 to 1500 meters, putting us in the position whereby we can swoop down on our foes still climbing rather than the other way round, as we do so very tightly against this Protest 631 before they're able to get an accurate head-on shot on us with their 20mm cannon. At which point we carry our momentum through to strike the PBY-5 up at an even higher level of altitude, bringing them down rather rapidly as we've now married a good climb rate with good firepower, whereby in the past with the likes of the D501, review available using the link in the top right corner of your screen as displayed now, we had the decent firepower but we didn't have the climb rate and the straight line performance. This means that you can go into a number of scenarios with greater confidence up in the higher altitude regions of the sky, as we now decide to cut over the top of the Protest 630 and cause them to stall out via a hammerhead. Swinging over will now wipe them out. In the meantime then, let's talk about altitude limits, whereby whilst you have the ability to accelerate after enemy aircraft up at altitude and climb after them, you will find at 4,500 meters altitude a good amount of stability in the aircraft begins to fade away and your control surfaces become a lot less responsive. Go above 5,000 meters altitude and your engine performance drops off considerably, meaning that you do not want to ideally engage foes above 4,500 meters altitude. But down at lower altitudes such as 2,000 meters depicted here, you have your full engine capability available, and with your straight line acceleration from your stall speed of 140 km an hour to 350 km an hour being decent, going up to 400 km an hour on more emergency power included, you can intercept and shake off foes who may be pursuing your friendly bombers. Or in the case of that scenario, the Heinkel 112A0 was pursuing one of their own bombers trying to team kill them, and we got in the way. And we're now going to swing around for our ace in a day by wiping out the F22.2 the Heinkel was trying to take out themselves. Picking up our ace in a day then, what you should note is that when you drop from higher altitude to low altitude, you have decent dive speed acceleration. And with your top dive speed of 837 km an hour, you can chase down a good number of foes, although there are exclusions such as the Heinkel 100D1, and it is the likes of those foes who will also outclimb you. But your climb rate is comparable to the likes of the Yak 1 and the Lag 3, meaning that you're on a good footing with a moderate climb rate compared to your battle rating contemporaries. Note here how we judge our reloads, so we've got our machine guns available for the F22.2 and our cannon available to dispatch the MB174A3, making the most of the extended reload on the 20mm cannon, which comes in at a base time of 40 seconds, as we picked up our 6th kill. Now in terms of energy conservation, you conserve energy very well in a straight line, whereby boom and zoom passes will see you carry a lot of energy through without exaggerated manoeuvres. The issue comes in the midst of a turn fight, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. As we go for a reload and look around us, let's talk about controllability for a bit. The control surfaces of this aircraft are rather interesting in the fact there's no unique control surface that's stronger than the others or weaker than the others. Your rudder is rather good, whereby it's strong initially and then gradually subsides to a weaker input, making for a decent flat rudder turn. It locks up between 550 and 650 km an hour, losing 50% of its capability. Your roll rate, once again, is rather good, albeit you have a very long lock-up threshold going from 450 to 700 km an hour, at which point you will lose up to 80% of your roll rate, meaning that high-speed boom and zoom passes, if your foe is being rather evasive, will be very difficult to execute and can lead you to floating past your foe and being put in their gun side. Especially once you hit 600 km an hour, the roll rate really begins to be compromised, so ideally you want to go into low speed boom and zoom passes, never going above 550 kilometers an hour. The elevator is the most interesting control surface, however, because technically at low speeds within your ideal speed range of 275 to 400 kilometers an hour, it is the weakest control surface. But as you take it to higher and higher speeds, particularly above 600 kilometers an hour, it becomes hypersensitive, and it means that you can perform some incredibly tight loops with your elevator whilst you're at the higher speeds, coming out of a very severe dive and being able to level the plane out more rapidly than a number of your contemporaries. And this means that you can snap onto the six of a foe who may be flying in level flight a couple hundred meters or even 1,000 meters below you with ease. And you'll note that as we go to higher and higher speeds in our dives on our foes, such as the Potos 630 here, we're able to bring the nose around using the elevator or level the plane out using the elevator much more easily than we're able to align the aircraft with our rudder or using our ailerons, where our elevator picks up performance with speed. But the issue with energy conservation when going into a turn fight at such speed is that unless we use our landing flaps, we'll just carry too much energy to follow this KI-61. And as you'll note, as we bring in the landing flaps, the overall turn circle of our aircraft begins to tighten rather drastically, putting it on the level of the likes of the KI-61 Mark 1 Co, as we take them out for our 8th kill. And that is another key part as well. When you have not got your flaps engaged, you'll find that your turn circle is comparable to the likes of a M.S.410 ML1 or an ML3. But as soon as you engage those landing flaps, you'll be able to turn as tightly as the likes of the KI-44, the KI-61. But the issue with engaging your landing flaps is you will bleed a ludicrous amount of energy in the horizontal, and this can lead you to being on the verge of hitting your stall characteristics quite early, whereby they come in as early as 190 km an hour. Now going head to head with that Junkers 87 there, we'll note that we exposed a key weakness of the M.S.410, the durability of the engine region. The airframe of this aircraft can take a good number of hits, whether it be machine gun or even some cannon shells. But as soon as you take hits to the engine region, you'll note that the oil will start to leak drastically, the water will be exposed, and the engine will sometimes even conk out. But fortunately for us, our teammates have done critical damage to this Junkers 87's engine by the looks of things, and we're able to finish them off for our 9th and final kill of the game. And their picking on the Junkers 87 was not advisable because we do not have the tight loop turn compared to the Junkers 87. Ideally we'd be using a P-36A Hawk to be able to outloop a Junkers 87. But beyond that, what we can see is the M.S.410 is a much more well-rounded package compared to what we've been flying previously. And with that, the game ends. It's time for us to take a look at the post-game stats. With our 9 kills, we picked up 24,535 silver lions and 2,624 research points. To defeat the MS-410 in a given matchup then, I can recommend one of 3 approaches. Option 1, if you're flying a plane with a naturally tighter turn circle, including the likes of the Spitfire Mark 1A, the I-16 Type 18 Ishak, and the KI-43, is to simply outturn the 410 in a horizontal turn fight. Option 2, if you're flying a plane with a wider turn circle but superior engine performance, particularly in terms of climb rate, and this includes the likes of the C202, the Heinkel 100D1 and the Yak-1, is to turn the turn fight into a climbing spiral, whereby you're increasing the altitude significantly as you go through each successive turn, as typically the MS-410 pilot will need to use their landing flaps to be able to turn inside you, and in doing so will bleed a large amount of kinetic energy or speed from their aircraft, at which point they'll start to hit their stall characteristics at a speed of 190 km an hour. And it becomes a question for the MS-410 pilot at that point, do I continue to turn or do I level out, disengage the landing flaps and try to build up my speed once again? Option 3, if you are flying a plane which fits neither of the criteria described by options 1 or 2, and you're flying a plane such as the CR714 or the P-36A Hawk, is to use a set of loops to get onto the 6 of the 410. As the elevator at lower speeds, i.e. below 400 km an hour, is rather sluggish compared to the elevators of the aircraft described, meaning that you will be able to have the tighter loop circle compared to the 410 pilot and get on the 6 over successive loops. But by avoiding such engagements today in our own MS-410 and playing to our strengths, we have hopefully demonstrated how this fighter is a rather potent one at its battle rate and tier. whereby compared to its predecessors, it is demonstrating the marrying of both engine power and firepower all in one go, and in a singular airframe it is able to work wonders over the course of a given game, being able to adapt on the fly to a number of roles, whether it be interceptor or turn fighter. If anything, what you were missing from the Tier 1 aircraft was the engine power, but having entered Tier 2, you now have the engine power to go with your firepower, and the M.S.410 represents a paradigm shift in the French tech tree. And so I've been TX141, and if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and good luck in the skies.